We're live, so none of your profanity or your slurs. Oh, God. What have I done? Why can't I hear him? Oh, God.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
How's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I am doing all right. It's been a long week. Just I've been working a lot.
Have you?
I have been. You know, my job at the coal mine, working long hours ever since Hillary Clinton decided to subsidize solar energy.
Yeah, I mean, if with any luck, you'll be out of a job within a matter of days as soon as Comrade Harris wins the election, when she steals the election from
Yeah.
God Emperor Trump.
Yeah, I'm a Trump Harris voter because Harris promised to implement communism, and so, you know, presumably if we can get some of that, then I won't have to work anymore.
Logic makes sense. Yeah, no doubt about it.
It's cast iron.
We were waiting on the other two, and then, oh my God, there's just so much going on.
That's true. There is a lot going on.
Jesus, yeah. There's the Tim Pool Trump discussion. There was Rob Noor and PSA Sitch and PF Young and Adam talking about the Trump indictment. Or excuse me, no. January 6th.
Re-indictment.
Yeah, and then there was, speaking of indictments, what happened today, which I still don't know that much about. So I was only able to give it a cursory glance.
But, yeah, that stuff looked pretty insane. Even, I don't know if you saw Tim Pool's, his actual like response to what was going on. His own response left a lot to be desired, and I feel like it's like already the making of a very bad argument, I think. So
we'll save it all for when everyone gets here, but somebody just complimented my clock. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's a big one.
Well, thank you. Take a look at it here. We'll switch. Yeah, my better half decorated this. She said it was time to retire the lights, so retired them. I did.
I once, as a birthday gift, you know, my wife was saying our home isn't decorated enough, so as a birthday gift, I gave her like a gift card, or not a gift card. It was just cash, and the purpose was to decorate the house or whatever. You know, just do it however you want, and I'll help you, you know, shop for everything and put everything in and whatnot. And my wife's idea of decorations was to buy a couch and a table. I was like, well, that doesn't really count as decoration.
She has a very utilitarian approach to decorations.
Yeah, she complains that the house isn't decorated enough, and I was like, I gave you a real shot at decorating the house, and you have squandered it. So,
yeah. That's awesome. Somebody, in the first video I did with it on, somebody's like, all it's missing is a live, laugh, love fucking sign. I'm like, fuck
true.
you.
Wait,
fuck
super
you.
true. Super true.
Oh,
it's cute. It's very domesticated.
I'm sitting here in my Ugg boots and
yeah, you have your pumpkin spice latte.
Right. Shake, 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 shake.
I was gonna say, come October, that better be pumpkin Halloween themed in the background.
Dude, fuck, listen, I'll be honest
with
you.
A little gourd.
No, listen, full disclosure, I used to love Halloween when I was a kid, and I still love horror movies and shit like that, but I am the least festive fucking person you've ever met in your life. Like, if you all were to see my apartment, it's...
Oh, I've seen it.
Oh, well... It's immaculate. Yeah, you only saw a couple of rooms. No, it's immaculate. But like she wants to decorate for every holiday and every occasion. As a matter of fact, so she's a big like NFL watcher, and so she and a bunch of our friends are coming over tomorrow to watch. I don't know if it's like the first season game or whatever this bullshit. I'll probably be working. I think I'm going to be doing a podcast or whatever. But it's like They've got football like hangers on the like door knocker outside, and they've got this and that, and she wants a fucking giant ass Christmas tree and jack-o'-lanterns for Halloween, and I could just do without all of it because to me it's like that's just more stuff to put away.
It's far too much work. It's far too
Agreed.
much work. Yeah.
You know what,
Yeah.
Josiah? I'm really happy about your decor.
Thank you.
And you know what else? I think you're a good guy.
Thank you. Stop it.
Unlike that Econo boy.
Okay, I was about to say, speaking of which, like, listen, here I am minding my own business, trying to like do the grind, and my shit's blowing up, and I'm glancing.
Is live and learn done?
Yeah, like, what's up with this? Why are we two fighting?
It's so stupid, but you guys know who I am, all right? I'm like a
Yeah, you're
dog with a
prick. I
bone.
get it.
Okay.
And
Okay. I was gonna say I just like trying to knock on the fucking door to.
Oh, I didn't
get
realize
into
he was
the
down
podcast.
there that
Let him
whole
in,
time.
let
I'm
him
sorry.
in.
It wasn't. You weren't in the holding area that long, were you?
His chat was like, "Where is he? Where is he?"
I just before we get into anything, I just want to say, welcome Hutch. I have to do something right now.
What's up?
I have to take this off.
Why? Because you got the camo?
Booyah!
Damn. Now
We
throw
all got
that
different.
twang
We
in
all got
there.
different versions.
Well, mine's official.
I actually like yours more because
Yeah.
yours is more. It seems like it's more authentically like hunting.
Yeah.
Because don't they wear those orange vests?
Yeah.
They do. They wear
No,
them.
you're thinking of people like doing
No, Josiah, come
community
on.
service. You're thinking of people doing community service under armed guard.
No, there's people
Like-
that when they go hunting, they do like the orange
The
vests. or
vest.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The designer cooked with the design of the Harris Walls camo hat.
And you can tell the difference between Econo boy. This will just be round 2 of our beef. You can tell the difference here in the craftsmanship. Like, look at that. The lettering, the orange, the size, the font.
Mhm.
I got walls. He doesn't have walls.
Yeah.
So it's all very noticeable.
Yeah,
All right, let's
this
talk
was
about this
a.
Kremlin operation.
Yeah, oh yeah, we should get into that.
Oh, okay. No more
Yeah.
hat talk.
So
Disappointed.
what's going on here? Because here's the thing. Listen,
Yeah.
I was saying to Econo Boy before you two popped on, I'm like,
Mhm.
I didn't know what the fuck we were going to be talking about because there was the Tim Pool, Donald Trump, whatever disaster. Then
A busy week.
yeah,
Wait,
then
wait,
PF
wait.
Young,
The what
Lex
disaster?
Friedman,
What disaster?
Donald Trump.
not Tim Pool.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
Lex Friedman.
on, just-
Lex
Oh,
Friedman.
yeah.
Lex Friedman. I'm sorry. I'm getting my stories confused here. Lex Friedman, Donald Trump train wreck. Then PF Young hosted a Rob Knorr PSA Sitch debate over fake electors,
Old news.
and then this happened.
Yeah.
Bro, what? So, and I haven't had a chance to really dive into it. So, who wants to?
I debated Rob as well on his stream a couple nights ago.
Oh,
and it
yeah?
was-
What?
Yeah. He is such a belligerent, disgusting creature. Like I actually hate him.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Wait, what the?
What
okay, let's-
happened?
because we're gonna devote. So
There's too much
time-
going on, Josiah.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. So listen, let's go in order of least importance, and let's start with obviously we're gonna do the tenant media shit. We got to cover that, but Hutch first. Wait, what the fuck? What
So
happened?
he was doing his own little stream about the Arlington situation.
Mhm.
And he was like he had been streaming for like an hour and a half, and he was watching the testimonials from the family that were like sticking up for Trump. And so I jumped in and I was just gonna like make the case of like here's why what Donald Trump did was wrong, and here's why, like, even though the family, I do have like sympathy for any Gold Star family, but they don't get to like just rewrite the rules. And he just immediately started accusing me of not caring about like someone who loses like a loved one in war. And I lost like a best friend in Iraq in like 2005. So I just felt it was like so fucking gross and disgusting. And then he straight up didn't know that there was a family member that was upset that their son's headstone was featured in a Trump TikTok. And it's like, dude, you're going to do content about this topic and you don't even know why people are upset. You don't even know why those rules are in place. Like, I don't know where this idea came from that he's a reasonable Republican, but no,
He's not. He's not. I would get a beer with Rob. I certainly, I think like outside of politics, but no, I don't think he's a reasonable at all. I think he's a conspiracy brain to the extreme. He's a hypocrite. He has double standards. He doesn't say shit. As a matter of fact, I tweeted him earlier today because Congressman Jamie Raskin is proposing a probe into the suspicious connections between Donald Trump and the government of Egypt. And I haven't heard shit about the supposed nonpartisan anti-corruption Rob Noor on this. He should be enthusiastic. Like, hell yeah. I wanted an exhaustive probe into Hillary Clinton's every goddamn email that Hillary Clinton ever sent. So 100% I support a probe into all of Donald Trump's shady connections to foreign adversaries, but he doesn't care. No, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So,
I mean,
I have
what did you guys think of the Arlington stuff?
I watched. Now that you're saying it, I do remember that exchange, Hutch. And I have kind of two substantive responses to what's going on. Number one, on the why didn't you address what's being said by the various families? We can, and I think that this kind of the foundational point that Rob makes is that the decision to leave Bagram Air Base was what got these people killed. Query whether that's true at all. I totally don't buy that kind of narrative. And it's kind of like an act, I think, of grace and kindness to not just be like disagreeing with those families, because I have to say, like, the reason why I haven't come out and addressed and in my opinion probably debunked a lot of the things that they're saying is because out of respect, because I'm showing deference to people who lost loved ones, and I just don't want to be an asshole. That is the reason why I'm not directly addressing their comments.
Wait, what's the real reason? What's the real reason, Pisco? You said you don't want to be an asshole. What's the real reason?
About them. This is all for political gain.
I mean, like,
you don't actually care about their viewing. Like, he's like a Paul Giamatti that's been left in the sun for 3 days. It's ridiculous.
It's needless to tailor my remarks, and if like we really wanted to get into the weeds of, is Joe Biden personally responsible for what happened? I mean, you're taking away all the blame of ISIS-K. You're taking away the fact that, Joe Biden was following the military suggestions with respect to the timing of what was going on. So, again, it's just.
Let's talk about this for a minute, because the Afghanistan withdrawal is a big bugbear of mine. It is to me what the fucking Crossfire Hurricane is to you, Pisco. Like, it's like one of the things, like I dove deeply into it like 3 years ago, and it's one of the few things that I don't have to consult notes for because it's just metastasized somewhere in my frontal cortex. So let's talk about this. So does President Biden bear any sort of moral responsibility for the deaths of soldiers on his watch? I would say yes. I would say he bears command responsibility. President Biden himself has acknowledged that when U.S. soldiers die on his watch, he bears command responsibility. That is the same thing for every president. This is where I would demand people like Rob Noor show consistency. If you're going to blame President Biden for the deaths of 13 U.S. soldiers who were killed by an ISIS-K suicide bomber, then Donald Trump bears responsibility for the 45 U.S. troops who died in Afghanistan in combat on his watch too. Right. And if you want to parse through that, or if there's a but, then you're just a piece of shit who should be relentlessly mocked.
Also,
pick a fucking. Sorry, I gotta get this rant out. Pick a fucking standard. One standard for every goddamn president. And if you gerrymander that standard, then again, you deserve nothing but contempt publicly otherwise. With respect to Bagram Air Base, the reason that there were a couple of reasons why the United States military during the withdrawal of Afghanistan shut down Bagram Air Base. Number one, they did not have the manpower to maintain it. You needed approximately twice as many soldiers as was left in Afghanistan to maintain Bagram Air Base, to fortify it.
Can we pause it right there real quick? Because we just, this is tying it into the interview with Lex Friedman. This week, Donald Trump said blatantly that if he were in charge, he would have left a permanent presence of thousands of troops in Bagram Air Base, acknowledging the reality that the military officials knew on the ground that you needed a significant presence to maintain Bagram Air Base. And in so doing, acknowledging that what Rob Noor's like main critique of the Biden withdrawal would require a significant presence there, at least for, beyond the timetable envisioned by the withdrawal.
You would have to do a troop surge. They would have had to send U.S. troops back into Afghanistan, which would have violated the spirit of the deal, perhaps even the letter of the deal that Donald Trump made with the Taliban, the Doha Agreement. That's one reason. Number two, Bagram Air Base is located, and I can't remember the exact number.
An hour and a half, I think.
Yes, from Kabul, which was the major population.
Where everyone is.
Right. So they would have had to, all those 100,000 people, 120,000 people that the United States Air Force or the United States Armed Forces had to airlift out of Kabul, they would have had to transport, dozens of miles in a country that is
nightmare.
Right, not just a logistical nightmare, to be true, but also a security nightmare as well, because the country was being swept by 75,000 Taliban insurgents. So
and
that's reason number
ISIS-K
2.
people that were let out by the Taliban. And by the way, the ISIS-K and the Taliban are not necessarily friends. The big carrot in the Doha Agreement was that there would be no terrorism by the Taliban, and they, correct me if I'm wrong, Pondering, they more or less kept to that.
No, they did. That was the one. That was the one condition of the Doha Agreement that the Taliban honored. If you actually watch the Afghanistan hearings, General Milley and General McKenzie explained that on paper it was supposed to be a conditions-based withdrawal. And here's the irony. Donald Trump, who is a serial liar and, breaker of words, the one commitment he ever made in his fucking life was to the Taliban. He honored every condition they imposed on him. When they said, U.S. government, here are 6 or 7 conditions, Trump followed through on all of them, including the release of 5,000 imprisoned Taliban fighters.
One of whom did the actual attack in the, oh my God, now I'm not remembering the name, but at the airport.
In contrast, I forgot about that. I didn't know that.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, in contrast, the Taliban only honored one condition that Trump imposed on them, which was they didn't shoot U.S. troops. The third reason that we shut down Bagram was because even though it had 2 airfields, General McKenzie testified about this to Congress. He's like, the loading capacity, the ability to load planes, was twice as much in HKIA, the Kabul airport. Okay. So they could load planes quicker in Kabul than Bagram. So these 3 reasons created a perfectly sound rationale as to why they gave up Bagram. Now, we can play armchair general in hindsight and say, maybe it would have been better to just surge the troops and take the risks, but it wasn't an irrational, ridiculous decision.
I think you're forgetting also one key factor as well, which was that? The Afghan government proved to be substantially more incompetent and incapable and corrupt than the public probably knew, right? Whereas like that's part of probably what went into that calculus as well, which is like, look, I mean, the Afghan government, it's not clear that they would be able to run this anyway, right? Like it might be better to just abandon it and shut it down and just allow it to be used for scrap than to, potentially allow this to fall into the hands of enemy fighters or to burden the Afghan government of having to maintain it when they clearly couldn't maintain almost anything that was there, right? I mean, they fell. I mean, it was ultimately the failure of the Afghan government over the last 20 years to, utilize all these resources that were granted, obviously not in ideal circumstances, but you figure after a whole generation worth of institution building and pretty genuine efforts among, from the U.S. government to try and, that was the project, was to build this nation out.
Right.
The government was just so corrupt. It was unbelievable. And maybe U.S. policy played into that corruption to some degree. I mean, of course,
well,
that's
they certainly
true,
did.
but...
I think with the collapse of the Afghan government, because the Special Inspector General's report on the Afghanistan collapse, like they're very clear that both the Trump and Biden administration, like I want to be very clear, I'm not saying that there aren't good faith criticisms that Rob or anybody could make of the Biden administration, including if you want to criticize, like in hindsight, we should have kept Bagram. But to pretend that there weren't sound reasons to do what they did is incredibly dishonest, number one. And number 2, there are many reasons to blame the Trump administration as well, which Rob will never do. Rob and other MAGA Republicans think that Trump is blameless, that he inked a perfect deal, and that it doesn't matter because Biden could have just scrapped the Doha Agreement, which of course he had the legal authority to do, but time doesn't cosmically reset when a new president is inaugurated. And if Biden had meaningfully violated the Doha Agreement, we would have either been in another hot war with the Taliban, or we would have at least had to surge troops there to prevent a hot war. And then what would have Republicans said? So it's just so much more complicated than it's all Biden's fault and Biden got all these troops killed and Trump is perfect.
But going to the Arlington thing though, like I think Pisco is 100% right. I'm not going to begrudge these families for being upset with Biden that their loved one was killed. Like I totally understand why they would have those feelings. And these people are Americans. They're allowed to have political opinions, and there's nothing wrong if they want to. There's nothing wrong, like on paper. I may disagree with them, but they have every right to support President Trump, invite him to the gravestone of their fallen soldier, their loved one. The issue was that there are rules in Arlington that are in place to make sure that stuff like what happened with the Trump TikTok doesn't happen. He took a selfie, like kind of bizarrely smiling and doing thumbs up next to a gravestone. And there was a gravestone right next to him featured in the video. And that soldier's family came out and said, like, we're disappointed that he was involved in a Trump ad. The policy at Arlington, I looked into this quite a bit, and they insist on using, it's not that you can't take any photographs, but you can't take any photographs for political campaigns,
Correct.
for any kind of political reasons. And that's why they insist on using in-house photographers and videographers, is to make sure that they frame the shots in a way that it doesn't involve these other headstones. And I got Rob in that conversation to agree begrudgingly. It took like 45 minutes because he kept on like insulting me and accusing me of not caring about dead soldiers, which I just found to be so disgusting. But I did get him to admit, like, yeah, maybe the rule is in place for a good reason. But if you admit that, then you're tacitly acknowledging that Trump made a mistake by doing that.
Yeah.
He did a bad thing by doing that.
And then
he just
tried to blame. Did you catch that? Where he was asked about this, but I think it was by an NBC reporter, the same one who asked him about whether or not he was going to support.
Maybe it was the families. Maybe it was the families.
Yeah. I don't know. I had no idea. No fucking accountability from this man in this political movement whatsoever at all. Super gross shit.
There are additional thoughts I want to give about this whole situation. I actually think it's opposite to what Hutch is saying in terms of, not what he just said, but I would go even further than what Hutch said. It's not just that we're not using these dead soldiers in any kind of way. Rob is using these dead soldiers as armor, right? He is trying to say, hold up as shields. These are my opinions. These people who lost their children share those opinions. What, you're going to disagree with them? And we, who are just like, we're not directing our criticisms, but yeah, the families are entering the political arena. They're making political statements. There's a long history of that in America, of people who have lost, children in wars, going back even before Vietnam, entering the political arena. It's legitimate, as Hutch said, but we're trying not to direct our comments towards them, so we're not assholes, but they're wrong and we don't agree with them. And he's holding them up as a prop to say, look at these guys. They don't really give a shit about them because they're not addressing their arguments. Where we've had these arguments, these Bagram airport, these discussions about the withdrawal, those have happened. And to pretend that they've been ignored or these arguments substantively haven't been addressed is preposterous. Into what Josiah was saying about the substance there, like, you can have a disagreement about the policy there and about the withdrawal. You can't say that Biden's listening to his military's trade-off in this particular instance is so grossly reckless to be essentially a malicious killing of these people, unless you want to apply that to everyone who died under Trump's watch, which of course he'd never do. And the final thing I want to say is on the specific rules, Arlington rules, it's the Rob Noor shell game again, right? Every policy you can think of in the entire world does things to some extent, but not the full extent, right? You tax to 20%, but not the full extent. You, regulate guns to some extent, but not the full extent. You say you can have this pool, but not that pool, right? And it's up to our legislators, our agencies, to make regulations that protect interests up to certain amounts, up to certain thresholds. So when Rob does this whole game, it's like, well, wouldn't Hutch, in your opinion, your world, the same interest be protected if the rule were even bigger and if the rule were even like larger? In a sense, yes, but we rely on our agencies to regulate up to certain thresholds and not further than those thresholds. One reason why it might not regulate the kind of conduct outside of Arlington or Section 60 specifically is because there are First Amendment interests outside of the specific area, which would prevent them from regulating, like, people posting other things, right? Go ahead.
Well, so specifically to that, because the right wingers have been bringing up a campaign ad that Biden posted in 2020 that used footage from 2015 when he was at an Arlington cemetery ceremony in the capacity of being the VP. So when he was filmed in that moment, the footage that they used, he wasn't there for any kind of campaign, but because that was used in a campaign, the Biden campaign added a disclaimer at the bottom of the video. This is not an endorsement from the DOD. So he did cover his bases there, and it was not comparable to what Trump did. But Rob was such a fucking pathetic hypocrite because he baselessly accused me of not caring about these families' like grief. And then when I brought up the family that was upset that their son was involved in this campaign ad, Rob goes, I don't think that was a big deal. I don't think breaking that rule is a big deal. So he's straight up saying, like, I don't really care that they were upset. Like, to me, it's not a big deal. So he was doing the very thing by dismissing their feelings that he was accusing me of doing.
If you take a step back, it's the same way he approaches all these conversations. If you want to talk about like the classified documents thing, it's a way of invalidating any application of the rule. What he's saying is essentially, no, everyone's a hypocrite because there's always something I'm going to try to compare it to, and so these rules don't even matter. And it's everything, right? It's the alternative elector scheme, comparing it to Hawaii. It's the classified document case, as I mentioned. It's the January 6th compared to BLM. Every single issue, the entire shell game is what I call it, is an attempt to invalidate the rules as applied to everybody by making these kind of absurd comparisons, or denying the fact that regulatory agencies or legislatures can make bright lines that maybe you could go a little further, but they are the ones empowered to make those rules. And it's clear Trump and MAGA do not care about those rules, about respecting the propriety of the space.
It's just obfuscation and muddying the waters, and it's stupid. But anyways, we should probably move on.
Yeah.
I fully support the Rob blacklist moving forward. Just being on record saying that, like, I don't.
I'm gonna keep talking. I think it's fun, but
yeah. So I don't blacklist anybody. I
me.
get blacklisted by people, but I do not blacklist myself. Econoboy, do you have anything you want to add to the Arlington thing? Because I've got something that you and I need to discuss about a conversation that was had yesterday on a panel.
Yeah, I think I just kind of put this in the bucket of like kind of mostly partisan haranguing. I mean, the truth is, like, I don't really think that I guess I don't draw like much of a principled difference between like what Joe Biden did and what Trump did, right, with regard to the filming in the cemetery. Right now, I get what Pisco's saying. Hey, he was there in a different capacity. This wasn't like a photo shoot. So obviously what Trump did was worse, right? But if we're saying the principle is that we shouldn't use the Arlington Cemetery for any sort of political, production, I mean, I totally agree with that, right? Which is why it's just kind of a different spectrum of bad, because it just does seem in poor taste. But this is just one of those issues that I feel like Republicans and Democrats might bring up to, get a quick snipe out at the other side. But it's flavor of the week type stuff. It's not really going to play a large role in the election outcome, or, obviously your conversation, Hutch, was ridiculous. So it sucks that you had to have such a heated conversation about it, but I don't think it probably makes it.
I think it's wildly disrespectful to do what he did, to push a staff member to the side.
No, I agree.
I think it is a big deal, to be honest with you. And I think
I think he was just talking about the footage. I think Econoboy would say the substance of the second part of the controversy, which there is no analog for President Biden, which is that members of the Trump campaign accosted a member of the Arlington National Cemetery. That there is no analog.
No, it's all bad what Trump did. Obviously, I'm just saying that when I say, I'm talking about in the grand scheme of the election. This just isn't. I mean, Trump got shot and the polls barely moved, right? So like, I just don't think that this will be like a particularly like resonant criticism of Trump. Ultimately, the truth is almost nothing that Trump. I mean, for Trump to do something that would cause him to make a significant drop in the polls, I can't even imagine what Trump would have to do to.
No, his support has been so like 43%.
Totally flat.
Yeah, man.
The whole time.
Yeah. And that in and of itself is just it's crazy to think about how, again, we can't even just blame the Republicans on this. Like, we have, I don't know necessarily about the four of us, I have caught myself doing it from time to time, just becoming so desensitized to the crazy shit that Trump does. We as an electorate, and this is something we're going to have to reckon with, and I think future generations will look back on this entire iteration of the United States, all 330 million of us who were alive at the time, saying, we can't believe you graded this motherfucker on such an
You guys were crazy.
Yeah,
back
seriously.
In the 2020s. Jesus.
Yeah. Because the same things that won't move the needle on Trump's polling would cripple, I think, any other political figure.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Bro, sure. Imagine just imagine a counterfactual where this was a member of the Harris campaign. I think that's it. She'd probably lose the election just based on this.
The Republicans in the House would open up an investigation the next day.
They did.
I want to say
100%.
The substance of what Econoboy is saying, like, I understand, Biden, in a sense, by using that footage, is politicizing Section 60 in that way, right? He's using it in that purpose. But if you conceptualize what the rules are there for, as it's against the rules to politicize Section 60. That's not what the rule is, right? The rule is designed to protect the integrity of the space, right? Everyone's going to politicize everything in the campaign, and the Arlington Cemetery and their rules and regulations do not cover conduct outside of the space. The whole purpose is to say, hey, when you are here, when you are in this space at these times, you behave in a certain manner, not another manner. And these are not traditional public spaces where you're allowed to do anything you want. These are places, sacred spaces to the country, and the country's allowed to have limits and conditions on how you use the space in the moment, which is what this is.
No, I agree. I think that the only thing that I'm pointing out is that I don't think that people on like news channels are making much of like a rules-based argument for why what Trump did was bad. Like, I don't think people are saying like, well, he broke the rules and this is the purpose of the rule. I think that what they're saying is typically like, can you believe he would use the Arlington Cemetery as a means to achieve political gain? And like, that's like the principle that they're appealing to.
I think they're saying that I don't agree. I think that there is a rules-based situation going on here. And what they're saying is just another example of Donald Trump not caring about, the rules as a, we can't hear you, Zai, if you're talking.
I think he's on the phone or something.
Oh, okay.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I think I disagree. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. I think that generally the criticism of this controversy is, that the Arlington Cemetery was attempted and I guess eventually used as a political prompt. Not really like, oh, look, can you believe that Trump broke the rules? Like, I think it's more of a specific principle that people are.
Well, there's a specific grievance.
Yeah, Hutch, what's your sense of it?
There's a specific grievance from that family of the soldier who was. There was a headstone that was in a Trump TikTok, and that person's family was like, "What the fuck? Like, why is my son's headstone in a Trump ad, like a literal Trump ad?" And so I think there's
but that interest would be captured by what Econoboy is saying when there would be parody, because you could see that it couldn't be for not a political purpose, but someone could later appropriate a picture that was taken within the rules. They could use it in a way that they found distasteful. And so that I don't think that that's the interest being captured by these rules. These rules are meant to preserve the integrity of the space and the solemnity of the space in the moment, not after activities that have nothing to do with
I agree with you. No, I agree with you for why I'm sure that is the reason why the rule was written the way that it was. I'm really not talking about that though. I'm really referring to the use of this scandal as a political message, right? And I think that the fundamental sort of principle that people are appealing to is not, well, we live in a rules-based order and it isn't important to respect the rules, especially as outlined by people with such a sacred duty. Isn't it so bad that he would use the Arlington Cemetery as a political problem? Obviously, we have a different sense of things, but at the end of the day, I think we can agree that this just doesn't move. This doesn't make any difference in the grand scheme of the election, I don't think.
I will say, sorry. Yes, my apartment complex called and had to deal with something. But the other thing I wanted to bring up before we move on to the bigger stuff, separate from the Arlington dispute, was Hutch. Did you get to see? Because I know Econoboy was in chat and Pisco was a participant. Did you get to see the WIC panel yesterday about Destiny versus the World on the Supreme Court and Supreme Court reform?
No, just like maybe 5 minutes of it. I didn't see much.
Well, Econoboy, I know you definitely feel this way. I think Pisco to a slightly lesser extent. But how do you feel about our boy Steven being so goddamn radicalized on Supreme Court reform? He wants to fuck that institution up, and my heart was skipping a beat, and I was seeing little cartoon heart emojis. I was like Roger Rabbit. It was glorious. What did you think about that?
I'm not sure what, I wanted to talk to him about it, about why he changed his mind, because I feel like only a year ago, Destiny would have been, he would have yelled at the present version of himself for having such opinions.
100% he would have. Yeah.
But, so I'm not sure. Maybe it was just the immunity decision that caused this radicalization. But obviously, it was pretty interesting to watch that debate. And I don't know. I was messaging Wick. I was like, look, the most based opinion is I want to pack the court just because I like liberal justices more than conservative justices. Not a single based member of the panel, if you ask me. But but I think it was a pretty good argument overall that Destiny made. And this was the argument that we made on the Three Wonk show that you were on, Josiah. Was the idea of using packing the court as basically a a nuclear option to Supreme Court reform. Look, hey, we have a unified democratic government. We will pack this fucking court if you don't agree to these very sensible institutional reforms of the Supreme Court. But then they should just do it anyway, after they get what they want, if you ask me. But that's just me,
No,
I guess.
Hutch, I definitely think you should check it out because it also led into, I think, revisionist history about the brinkmanship employed by the Republican Party. So there are people on the panel who believe that the current state of affairs in the Senate is because of Harry Reid. Harry Reid was the one who ruined the Senate. Hutch, did you know that?
It was.
I mean, I've heard this argument throughout the years, many times.
Yeah,
Right,
Nevada shouldn't be a state. Should just be part of California.
Yeah, it's so.
Had there ever been a precedent in Senate history where you had someone like McConnell who was obstructing to the extent that he was on Obama's watch? Had that ever happened before?
No, and this was the thing that was so frustrating, and Pisco made this point, and Destiny, I was trying to drop like tidbits in chat, but at the time of President Obama's second term, the time he left office, fully half, 50% of all filibusters and other forms of Senate blockages occurred in the two Obama administrations by Senate Republicans. Like, that's a staggering, incredible escalation. So no, you're right. Filibusters had been employed before, but not like that and not nearly as ruthlessly.
Mitch McConnell is a unique beast in the American political his landscape, I guess.
Yeah, it's just the whole thing. I mean, again, it was a good 3-hour back and forth. And the big takeaway is how radicalized Stephen's become on this, which makes me extremely happy given how effective he is as a messenger for this sort of stuff when he wants to be. Pisco did an amazing job hopping in as well and going lawyer to lawyer, because it was Destiny versus 3 lawyers.
Yeah, essentially 3.
Yeah. But it's just the other reason I brought it up, even though you didn't watch it, Hutch, is because, again, it's so frustrating to hear that Democrats are the only ones with agency. If Democrats do something, it's 100% their fault. And if Republicans do something, it's also because of Democrats. So like when McConnell, invoked the nuclear carve out to pass Supreme Court with justices with just a simple majority, that's because of Democrats, not McConnell's own political expedience. It's because of Harry Reid. And the flow chart for culpability in modern politics is really, really aggravating.
Just feels like it's only a matter of time before this filibuster's gone in the Senate. I feel like its days are numbered, and the next 2 decades is probably gone.
Well, I want to be clear about,
can only make it happen, Hutch. I would love for that to happen.
I'm glad that Stephen has come around to this position. It was one of our first debates back when I was in law school. And that was like 4 years ago. Crazy. We discussed the Supreme Court and issues with it. And I only support it because of what happened with Merrick Garland's seat, and then afterwards with the reneging on the principle, quote unquote, established by Mitch McConnell. But I've been in support of it ever since that moment because of what occurred and what I consider to be a worse form of court packing. And when I say this on the panel, people don't quite understand, but hopefully now I have a better ear to listen to. What people really care about is the partisan balance of the court. What they care about is the decisions and the outcomes of the decisions.
Not the sheer number of seats. Just to be clear.
The number of seats is like whatever, right? And so we all agree, I think, that Congress has the authority to expand the court. And we can all acknowledge that maybe it would be, in recent memory, a little bit precedent breaking, we might say, to expand in a vacuum, right? To expand the number of seats, maybe in the recent history. And I would say, yeah, sure. To the same extent that we would say that it's precedent breaking and, to withhold your constitutional duty to either give advice or consent or vote something down, a waiver of your responsibility. And so the question is, which is worse? Affecting the partisan balance of the court, which is what everyone cares about, via the unilateral action of one man, Mitch McConnell, or affecting the partisan balance of the court via a bicameral piece of legislation and presented to the President of the United States for signature. Which is better? Which is worse? If they're both breaking of norms, why would you ever say that the law is worse than just one person deciding, hey, we're never going to do our constitutional duty? It makes no sense. And so that's a worse form of court packing.
Yeah. And I remember now it's all because it was, of course, 3.5 hours of just of pure grade A content. But now I remember because I think one of the attorneys was like, well, the effect is still the same, because you were like, okay, well, if the effect is the same,
Yeah.
Does one being constitutional not matter more
Oh,
than
yeah.
the other? Yeah. Well, the effect is still the same.
It was so
Yeah.
silly. But I'm glad that he's becoming more black belt. I think Stephen is a little oppositional thinking, and he'll come around to the right opinion when the obnoxious conservatives or whoever that he's debating comes to one side, and that's a better way to convince him than us trying to push him, because he'll try to be oppositional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
And don't ever bring up that he changed his mind.
No, fuck no. Are you serious? Jesus, baby. No, listen. Because I've had some people go, why aren't you taking a victory lap? This is what you've been complaining about and wanting for
Because
like
he's
2.5
liable to go
years.
back on that.
And I'm like, no, I don't give a shit. Like, to me, it's at the end of the day, it's about people coming to a better conclusion. So as long as he is kind of radicalized on this issue, I don't care how he got there. So, what do you want to have the final comment on this? Because there's some breaking news. Go ahead.
Yeah, no,
Connor.
I was just gonna say, I think or not accountable. I think that Destiny will definitely stick with this position for, the foreseeable future. The only thing that I was gonna add to what Pisco says, I feel like you can make a very strong argument that packing the court is also just like a strictly pro-institutional thing to do. Like if we just look at what the conservative court has decided these last these last few years, let's say, that it's been a 6-3 majority. It's been pretty institution degrading. Let's say some of the things that they've decided. And so obviously we might imagine that the liberal court or a more partisanly balanced court would just like in and of itself be a more pro-institutional stance to take than, just letting the court continue as is essentially. Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, what's this breaking news that
Let's see.
There's not too much substance to it yet, but the implications could be interesting.
Tara Palmieri, new leak. Trump's co-campaign managers, Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles, warned staff in internal email to stop talking to the press less than an hour ago with the threat of termination. There must be a hot story in the works. Team, Susie and I have always said this is the best team in politics, and each day that passes, we are reminded of how true that is. Everyone has made sacrifices and put in the time and effort to help elect Donald Trump. Senator Vance and all Republicans running for office. Note that I didn't use the title for Trump because I never will. Fuck that guy. He will always just be Donald Trump. Throughout this campaign, we have sent periodic reminders of our communications and press policy when interacting with reporters and media members. Unless you have been authorized by senior leadership or have received permission from an authorized member of the communications team, you communicating with any member of the press. Wait a minute. Oh my God. I can't zoom in on that for whatever reason. Blah, blah, blah. We have done a great job of preventing leaks, and that has been because everyone knows what the policy is and what we expect from everyone. Information is power, and the press doesn't give a damn if you lose your job because you spoke out of school. Is that an expression? I've heard spoke out of turn, spoke out of school.
A little time.
What that is.
Yeah, as this team moves forward with only 61 days left until victory, please do not deviate from this policy. Success requires buy-in from everyone. If just one of us goes off course, it jeopardizes not only the team, but also convicted felon and adjudicated rapist Trump and Republicans up and down the ballot. Onward to victory.
So that implies that there's a juicy leak maybe in the works coming. But we also know that their campaign emails, or their not just their emails, but like their campaign, there were like lots of campaign documents that got hacked. And Washington Post and Politico, I think, have both been. Was it Politico or was it one of the other ones? Have been sitting on these hacked emails.
Politico.
For like 2
Politico.
months.
Fuck yeah.
They're waiting until October to release
I'm
the
fine.
big
Hey,
bomb.
listen. Hey, if they want to do October surprises, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If Politico and others want to cynically sit on it until the most opportune time, so be it.
Josiah is okay with media colluding against Donald Trump, is what I'm hearing.
Listen to me. If Politico makes the independent decision to fuck Trump over for their own clicks, I'm fine with that. That doesn't require collusion. Implies that Vice President Harris or President Biden are involved somehow. That would be wildly inappropriate.
I think the guy who's in charge of Politico sent an email to all staff asking them to pray for Donald Trump. So I
think that's what the real reason is. Politico and just real clear politics. These are just like right-wing bias sources. The double standard again is glaring, and that is another reason why I think the media deserves nothing but contempt.
It was speculated that Iran was responsible for this breach, but I'm actually shocked that it hasn't leaked so far. Like, why didn't Iran send it to just like a blogger or something like that? Like, it's kind of weird that it hasn't leaked by now. I think
it is kind of weird that that these sorts of things, they manage to plug the leaks when it's advantageous to Donald Trump. But again, like just, if it were a
Liberal media
Democrat, it should be different.
colluding with Iran to leak information strategically timed in order to avert the worst outcome for the elite, which is Donald Trump being elected.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
So
hearing.
I will say with Chris LaCivita, he is he's good at what he does. This has been really until the vice president became the presumptive Democratic nominee. This has been the most disciplined of the 3 Trump campaigns. And Hutch, I'm sure you follow this pretty closely, but rumors are there are troubles in paradise because Trump a few weeks ago brought back fucking Corey Lewandowski of all people. Right. And, you want to talk about the exact opposite of a guy like Chris LaCivita. Corey Lewandowski, his mantra in the 2016 campaign was let Trump be Trump, which quite frankly is the worst piece of advice you can offer to Trump if you want him to get elected.
Well, I think it was good advice in 2016. I don't think it's good advice in 2024.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible advice now. And again, we can run through the counterfactuals, but I don't know, if not for nothing. But if Director Comey did not make that announcement that they were reopening the investigation into Secretary Clinton, I maintain that advice, let Trump be Trump, would still have been insufficient to defeat her. I think it was Comey more than let Trump being good campaign advice. But yeah, so to me, I'd definitely be interested in seeing where this goes. So you think that there's going to be a breaking story like that they're basically on the ass end of, and we just
it could be. I mean, it implies that there was a leak that they're worried about, and there was a leak today. I think that from Trump's internal that they're giving up on New Hampshire. Like originally they were going to target New Hampshire, and they thought that there was an opening there, and I guess they've changed course and they don't see a path there. I don't know if you guys saw the campaign spending recently, but the ad buys situation is pretty fucking crazy right now because he's only right now the Trump campaign is only investing money in Pennsylvania and Georgia, which makes sense because Pennsylvania and I mean both of those states and North Carolina are going to be really crucial. Like Kamala can lose Pennsylvania, but if she wins a combination of Georgia or North Carolina and Arizona and or Nevada, then she can still win. But it's just without Pennsylvania, that path really narrows for both of them.
It is interesting that it seems like he's throwing all his resources in a single permutation of a victorious electoral map, whereas it seems like the vice president's pursuing multiple paths to victory. Conboy, you want to weigh in on that? I'm sorry.
And they also just real quick, they also just announced that the Kamala campaign is giving $25 million to down ballot races. So that's a sign of confidence right there.
I don't know. I think it's a very sound strategy for the Trump campaign to basically spend all their money in PA and Georgia, because if they lost every single swing state, if they lost every one of them except for those two, they would win the whole election. And so if they only won Pennsylvania and Georgia, that's all they technically would need to win. Now that is actually
North Carolina.
Is that true?
No, North Carolina is the other one.
Well, that's true, but I think North Carolina is a seat where, I mean, truthfully, I think that they're pretty confident in North Carolina. I think they have reason to be. That's a stretch goal for the Democrats. And so when I say every state, I am including North Carolina, and I'm also including states like Ohio and Florida, where it's like sort of tilt red in my view. But
you're not considering North Carolina.
If you won Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia, that would be exactly 270.
Yeah, but North Carolina, is that a swing state or not? I mean, I think it's a swing state.
It is. It's a real tight race in North Carolina right now. Real tight.
It is. No, it's a legitimate swing state. I mean, he's got to dedicate time to it for sure. And the fundraising numbers nominally, the fundraising numbers look terrible for Trump. Like, it's kind of unbelievable, the difference. She has like seemingly more than twice the money. But no, I think that North Carolina.
Sidebar on that, didn't I just see a thing that the fundraising that he pulled in for August of 2024 is like $80 million fewer than he pulled in August 2020. I think like I saw somebody say that like this time in the 2020 election, he's raking in a big fat wad less than he did this time in 2020.
I'm not sure. I can tell you that his fundraising haul is especially unimpressive considering he had an assassination attempt, full like week-long media positive coverage leading right into the convention. and his fundraising numbers are still looking terrible in comparison to Kamala Harris. It's actually pretty unbelievable.
And
But
he's taking the whole. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to finish up what I was saying, I think it's a very sound strategy for them to basically just focus on PA and Georgia. They still look like relative underdogs when you look at the fundraising numbers and the polling momentum. But I think that, frankly, it's the most conservative strategy that they could have that's winnable. And when you think about their tight budget, it makes even more sense that they would campaign that way.
Fair.
I was also going to say that he doesn't have anything planned for this week. It's pretty bizarre. Like, we're in the home stretch. There's about 60 days left of this campaign, and he's not doing any events until next week.
Well,
like,
memes aside, I'm curious. Like, obviously, it's half true, half memeing. When we play up the fact that he's 78 years old, the oldest presidential candidate. I'm not memeing or playing up the fact that I think that he is mentally unfit to be president, which again the polls reflect compared to Vice President Harris. But you heard him in that God damn it, not Tim Pool, Lex Friedman, that Lex Friedman interview.
Totally different names.
I know, but it's just, I've got fucking Tim Pool on the brain because Lex has just no personality. But you heard him during that interview, man. He was like sedated, So I said, he beat us by a whisker. A whisker.
He had the Biden whisper.
It was a combination of Lex's podcast is already like very mellow, and so that juxtaposed with Trump's very subdued demeanor, I felt like was not a combination that I thought made him look particularly energetic.
But I guess my question is, do you think that there's validity, like genuine substance to that, like when you're talking about his schedule and when he shows up, how weak his performances are, that he just doesn't have the energy that he did in 2016, 2020?
I think everything's related.
Clearly diminished.
I think everything's related. I think that he's probably getting less people in his audience because he's not really performing quite as well. Also, obviously, because his base has probably shrunk marginally since 2020 and 2016. Certainly the enthusiasm has shrunk a lot, it seems, amongst.
You mean because they died of COVID?
That could be, honestly. I mean, again, people really understate that as a reason, but that's a serious reason why he might lose this election, ongoing reason. But I will say that with regards to Donald Trump, he's getting older. He's performing worse at these rallies. Of course, his stamina might be lower. But something that I've seen in the reporting as well is that Trump is like really self-conscious about how little he's selling, basically. That like he's not really selling out arenas like he used to. And I've heard some speculation that this is why he had that rally in Montana. Hey, at least you could sell out in Montana, basically, right? Where you can't necessarily sell out in Pennsylvania. And so I think that these kind of things sort of are eating themselves. And they're all, part of the reason why we're seeing him do, like a rally a week or something like crazy like that. And then the lack of funds also matters as well. I've read that his campaign has somewhat of a reputation for not paying their bills. So they have a difficulty getting venue selections. And obviously those venues are expensive in and of themselves. So it's like, you have a reputation for not paying your bills. They're probably going to expect large deposits up front. You probably have a harder time getting venues in the first place. He's a self-conscious because he can't fill the venues that he had. Just all these reasons together is why it's kind of a limp performance, you could say, going into November.
We should say that right now the polls suggest, even though Kamala is anywhere between 3.5 points up nationally, depending on which aggregate you look at, RCP is a little bit lower, but they include some questionable pollsters in their aggregate. We should say that across the swing states, it is a very, very close race still. She's up a little bit more in Wisconsin, closer to 3 points, closer to 2 points in Michigan, but it's like less than a point in all the rest of the states: Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada, Arizona.
I'm very confident in the polls, though, Hutch. Very confident.
I mean, I think it's interesting. So, for example, New York Times Siena, they talked recently or earlier this year, and then it came up again recently, about how one of the things that they changed about their methodology was that before they would encounter a lot of people who would get angry and hostile with them and say, "Fuck you, I'm voting for Trump," and then they would hang up. And they are now including those people as a vote for Trump. What's interesting is that if they would have included those people in 2020, it would have accounted for about 40% of their polling error. So that's not the only way that they've changed their methodology, but every major pollster has changed their methodology since 2020. The big cope that we're hearing from MAGA or that I'm seeing a lot on social media is that Kamala's lead is less than Biden's was at this point and Hillary's was at this point, and therefore they just assume the same polling error is going to happen in 2020. They're putting all their eggs in that basket. And just to be clear for our audience, I would much rather be us right now with these poll numbers, and there's no reason to assume that the same exact polling error is going to occur in 2024. In 2012, for example, the polling error was in Obama's favor. So
Yeah, and in 2020, some of the state polling errors were in Biden's favor. You know, for instance, he was predicted to lose Georgia. He ends up winning Georgia. So it's really not all necessarily bad things. And
wait a minute. Wait, I'm sorry. Hang on. Econoboy, come on. As Rob has said recently, not to throw Rob under the bus again.
What did Rob
right now,
say?
Georgia fraud cases are right now being litigated. Okay, and maybe Pisco could talk about that later. But hey,
point.
the final word on whether or not Georgia was legitimately called for Biden has not been said yet.
The Georgian election was stolen. I forgot to include that in my my polling analysis, but. If we at least assume the votes, they'll get away with it. At least the polls underestimated Biden's performance. They underestimated his ability to steal the election, apparently. But I think
really
that there's some reasons.
It really depended on the state, because I think was it Iowa? There was a massive polling error in Trump's favor. It was like 8 points or something like that.
That was the polling error in Wisconsin, but the actual top line for Biden was very accurate. But it's just that it's like the polling aggregate was like 50-44. Biden, Trump, and Biden ends up getting 50% of the vote, but Trump ends up getting a really disproportionate amount of those undecided voters, at least by the polling. And so I think that there's a lot of reason to think that in the states where she's leading in aggregate, she's probably got a lead. But when the differential is like Kamala 49, Trump 44, well, really that's probably a close race, but she's probably got a lead. And the last thing is that, there's reason to believe that they're overcounting conservatives, and that's part of the reason why Democrats have overperformed their polling, because what pollsters do is they never get a representative sample just from calling people. They'll call a certain number of people, they'll email, however the method is for collecting the data, and then they'll population weight those people. Let's say that you get a population, you're doing a Georgia poll and you get a phone population that's only like 5% black or something like that. You put a multiplier on what those black people said in order to weight them to the population. And, because of demographic change.
Just to jump in, education was the biggest one that they fucked up on in 2020.
So not only are they minimizing the errors they made in 2016, like Hutch said, by adjusting the multipliers that they do to groups favorable to Trump, but there's also groups that are favorable to Trump that are going away or transitioning because of demographic changes, because of COVID, because of Kamala entering the race and probably outperforming Joe Biden in many different demographics. And so for all those reasons, I do in this election have a pretty decent amount of confidence in the polls for Kamala. But the polls do represent a really tight race. They do represent a tight race, just a tight race that Kamala has a slight advantage on.
I'm going to be nervous as fuck. I don't know. Were you guys? So my 2020 night, my 2020 election night was miserable. I don't know about you guys, but
my week was miserable.
Election, yeah, exactly. That I wish it was just one bad goddamn night, and especially
no. We knew the next day. We knew the next day. Like once Biden caught up in Michigan and Wisconsin, I was by the next day I was like, we're going to
Pennsylvania wasn't called until Friday, Hutch. Until Friday.
Plus, and here's the other reason why it was not certain what was going to happen, because the sitting president, the most powerful man in the world that night, looked the cameras dead ass in the face and called said he won and called on people to stop the counting.
Right.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next thing, if you all want to get like final words in on this.
Yeah, I think the Democrats they're in it to win it. They're going to steal another one. Remember that, conservatives, not much point in voting when your vote's already counted.
I do want to linger there on the definition of stealing an election that some people are taking with the recent kind of statements by Zuckerberg. I had a Twitter space about this regarding what happened with the Hunter Biden story and things related to the intelligence agencies. Number one, foundationally, all those people crying foul on the the DOJ are completely wrong, and it's the opposite. The story from Zuckerberg, that statement from Zuckerberg, shows Donald Trump's corruption. Why? Because we know, thanks to an indictment of Alexander Smirnov, that at the time that the DOJ and others were briefing social media companies about the possible threat of Russian disinformation related specifically to Hunter Biden and potentially even to Burisma, we know that they were aware that Alexander Smirnov was literally a Russian agent who was promoting a fake narrative from Russia that that Hunter Biden was corrupt and there were some corrupt dealings. And that was a narrative that was pushed forth by Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani when Trump was literally pressuring Prosecutor General Lutsenko to announce investigations into the Bidens, and then President Poroshenko, and then President Zelensky. And so all of this shows that the fact that the DOJ was having to give these defensive briefings to social media companies, that actually that was the correct thing to do. That we want our DOJ, our intel agencies, to say, listen, we see this narrative that Russia's trying to push. We're just putting you unaware of it. That's number one. That the sort of foundational beliefs here on stealing an election is completely the opposite. It was corruption from Trump and Giuliani that this is exposing. And number two, if your definition of stealing an election is when the government or someone lies to you, oh my God, that is not any definition of stealing an election that you should use. One, if that's true, then the stealing of the election happened before the election even occurred, and therefore, if Trump had won, would it still have been stolen? I mean, the chronology there doesn't even really make sense.
Or again, you could use the same logic, or at least a close facsimile,
right, for 2016.
Yeah, precisely, yeah. Exactly. So, but they don't want to go down that road. That's why I genuinely believe, I think as a standing principle, that anyone who, like that fucking dumbass that Steven talked to, the one who's like, I don't know anything about that.
The guy,
the most profoundly uncurious person in political commentary. I think that one of the questions that should be asked is, do you have the same agnosticism or skepticism about the 2016 election? Is 2020 the only election in American history where I don't know who won? Like, to me, like, there has to be an exposure of the hypocrisy, the double standards, even though obviously,
stealing an election means taking it from the rightful winner, and that rightful winner as determined by the votes, not by people lying. If people lying was sufficient to let's say it swung an election one given year, then I don't know, people lie in every single election, and people have coordinated lies in every single election.
People have lied in every election where there's been a Republican running for office. So anyway, let's go to the tenant media thing, because I know the least about this. I am so late to this goddamn game,
bro. It's nuts.
I know you all. I don't. Well, maybe a convoy.
It's a nice transition because we were just talking about Russian narratives and Russian lies.
Yeah.
And look.
So wait a minute. This is the wrong one. So can somebody succinctly give me a description of what the fuck is going on?
DOJ is charging Russian affiliates or associates, Russian nationals, with FARA violations related to their activities in the United States and sending out Russian talking points, failing to register. So a conspiracy with that, and also for money laundering for corrupt actions related to the payment of individuals for this scheme. And it relates to tenant media and some prominent conservative influencers.
DOJ alleges Russia funded U.S. media company linked to right-wing social media. So it's so funny.
Bro. So real quick, some things that jumped out to me. Number one, so this tenant media, I think, is owned by Lauren Chen and her husband. Yep. And I believe what is being alleged is that they did know that this was coming from Russians.
Knew. Yep.
And they lied to the content creators. So I just want to be careful. We're not accusing Benny Johnson and Tim Pool of knowingly, wittingly going along with this. But something else that's really interesting in an article that I read was the payments from this Russian person accounted for 90% of tenants' deposits for their business. So I don't know if they account for revenue in different ways, but it looks like 90% of tenant media was propped up by literal Russian actors who were looking to launder.
Well, yeah, it was a Russian invention. It was an invention of the intelligence agencies of the state of Russia. I mean, and that is just 100% being established by this indictment. And I
Do
don't.
we have?
and I
Well,
believe
does the
DOJ.
indictment, real quick, when you say that you read an article that 90% of their revenue was provided by these Russian sources, does there a dollar figure attached to that? Out of curiosity, like, do we have any
It's
idea?
millions.
I believe it's 10 million.
10
I believe it was 10 million. There were commentators that were alluded to as like commentator 1 and commentator 2. I think commentator 1 and commentator 2 are Tim Pool and Benny Johnson, and both of them
It might be
were-
Ruben. Or
but I don't know what numbers they were. It was also Dave Rubin and Lauren Southern and 2 other people that I can't remember. But for commentators 1 and 2, one of them asked for $5 million a year, and the other asked for $100,000 a month plus $100,000 signing bonus, which is essentially about $5 million a year. It's about 4.9 million a year. The Tenet, there was internal communications where they were basically saying like, I don't know if we can give that much money because then this venture would not be profitable, but then they ended up doing it anyways. So by all accounts, Benny Johnson and Tim Pool, if they are commentator 1 and commentator 2, were being paid around $400,000 a month.
Funded media. Yeah.
To post one video a week. And there's also a video. Let me put it in the thing. You should put this on the screen, and it's a video, and I don't know if this was sponsored by Tenet, but if you just listen to the rhetoric in this Tim Pool video, it's like insane that it came to light that they were literally being paid to launder Russian disinformation. Click on that link and watch that. Yeah, Driznar, 100K weekly would come out to around 5 million a year.
100,000 a week. My God.
Well, there's 52 weeks in a year, so that would be 5.2 million.
And they know it.
That's so many.
But I don't know that it matters anymore. This is psychotic. Ukraine is the enemy of this country. Ukraine is our enemy, being funded by the Democrats. I will stress this.
Wait, who's the one being funded by Russia?
Bro, just the context of today.
One of the
for
greatest
this video.
I want to hear that one more time. Sorry, I was so confused.
It's so good.
Look at that fucking scowl on his face. Oh no! Did somebody take it down? Did the State Department take
No,
this
refresh,
down?
refresh, just refresh it. You're good.
I'm doing it. Hang on. That's
so good.
The Twitter media player
Oh my
sometimes is a bit.
God. Yeah, it can be.
Twitter's silencing the story, perhaps.
And they know it. But I don't know that it matters anymore. This is psychotic. Ukraine is the enemy of this country. Ukraine is our enemy, being funded by the Democrats. I will stress this again. One of the greatest enemies of our nation right now is Ukraine. They are expanding this war. Now, don't get me wrong. I know you've got criminal elements of the U.S. government pushing them and guiding them and telling them what to do. Ukraine is now accused, a German warrant issued for blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, triggering this conflict. Ukraine is the greatest threat to this nation and to the world. We should rescind all funding and financing, pull out all military support, and we should apologize to Russia.
This guy was allegedly being paid $100,000 a week to post videos with using similar language like that. Insane.
Now,
and then it begs the question, who else is doing this? Because it can't just be them, right? There's no way that they would only target this one, like Lauren Chen and her husband. So I feel like it's reasonable to assume that other commentators are fucking compromised.
Yeah, if Jimmy Dore isn't getting Russian money payments, I would be positively shook. That is an allegation baseless made by me, but we will see. We haven't seen the full fruits of this investigation yet. I think that the craziest part, one of the crazier parts about this, actually, in my view, is Tim Pool's statement about this whole thing. He actually made a statement on Twitter. And his defense, which I thought was pretty telling, was, look, 2 things. All right. Number one, my media organization existed before Tenet, which it's like, hey, fair enough. Obviously, it's not as if this was a entrepreneurial activity from the Russian government. We were
Like, can we just stop? Like, no shit, right? Like the whole point of you being approached was because you had a pre-existing platform. That was the whole point. But yeah.
But really quick though, Pisco, I think the key part here is that let's just say that what Tim Pool is saying is true, because what he also says is I always had 100% editorial control. It's like, well, hey, dum-dum, doesn't that at least give you pause for thought that even if you weren't aware that this money came from Russia, and even if you didn't take any orders from anyone with regards to the, your show, the Russian government thought it was important to ensure that your show was fully funded. Doesn't that
No, no.
give you pause for thought?
Not only that, think about this for a minute. You're approached by Lauren Chen, right? Like he wasn't directly approached by the Russians that were allegedly involved in this. And you're offered you ask for this like exorbitant salary and they give it to you. And then the talking points they're presenting to you to work into your videos perfectly align with Russian interests. And nothing goes off in your mind. There's no kind of spidey sense of like, this is kind of weird. That is really hard for me to believe. Like, I think I'm not saying that they 100% knew, but it seems totally plausible to me that they just chose to not think about it against their better judgment, because that is just unthinkable to me that they didn't have any suspicion. Like, why is this random guy in Europe paying me, $400,000 a month to talk shit about Ukraine? Isn't that weird?
What about like any of the others? I know Benny Johnson issued a public statement. Has Chen, has Lauren Southern, like has anybody?
Lauren has not since the time I had a couple.
Which Lauren? There are two of them, right? Lauren Chen and Lauren Southern?
I haven't seen anything from them.
I'm blocked by Southern on Twitter, unfortunately.
What?
What'd you do?
Lauren Southern hasn't posted anything. Lauren Chen she's more seriously implicated because I'm pretty sure that they're alleging that she knew.
So I'm not up to date on my Lauren Southern lore, but my understanding is she's
what
trying
if Lauren
to
Chen went to prison? That would be crazy.
My understanding is that Lauren Southern was trying to do like a bit of like political redemption, like she was going more towards the center. So even if she's not directly implicated in the indictment,
she's back on the Great Replacement stuff.
Very brief offshoot of Lauren Southern.
You can go to Tenet Media. You can go to their YouTube, and there's a video from Lauren Southern about the Great Replacement stuff. So
nice.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good. They're interesting, fascinating.
Here's one point I'll have on both Poole, Lauren, and all these other people. Like, I think it is possible that all these individuals, they had odious beliefs before 2023 or whatever this, they were Tenet started or whatever. It is possible for you to promote Russian alliances because you genuinely think that that's in the best interest of America. Or you could genuinely say that, I think Ukraine, our support endangers the world, and I think that America shouldn't do it. That's all like potentially something that's not a grift, potentially something that's not whatever, right? And so I think that it's important. Hutch said at the beginning, we don't know necessarily that the creators were willing accomplices with the direct channel to the Russian kind of money of it. But here's what I think is the kicker: that you're not immediately for Tim Pool like apologizing, or you're not putting out a statement saying, hey, I'm sorry I was a witless tool of the Russians, and you're not being
or you can just end after tool. You can just say a witless tool.
Yeah,
I'd be fine
sure.
with that.
I think we should start a campaign to pressure them to donate every penny that they got to charity, because otherwise
yes,
like get Destiny involved, just like put a ton of pressure on these people, because otherwise it's just like, I didn't know, but I'm gonna keep this fucking $5 million that I got. Like, really? You're gonna keep $5 million from an adversary? Really?
You guys are talking a big game for.
Oh wait, does the DOJ seize that stuff, or are they gonna let them keep that money?
I don't know. So there are policies in the DOJ and laws that allow you to allow the DOJ to get that money. They can essentially put on penalties to make sure that there's no unjust enrichment or anything like that. But again, the people who are charged in this indictment probably very unlikely to ever see a U.S. court. And like, what were these indictments?
Wait a minute, why?
Because these people are foreign nationals. They're not never going to come to the United States.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant I thought you meant the Tenet Media influencers. I'm sorry.
They're also probably. I mean, I think that if there were criminal allegations against them, we'd probably see it around this. I think the one exception here is Lauren Chen and whatever that is. They might have talked to the DOJ already. Who knows? I'm just speculating at this point, so I have no idea what that is. But a lot of these indictments, the similar one there was one against the Hamas people, right? Some of them are dead, right? The indictments against whatever the guy's name, the former leader of Hamas who was killed by Israel. These are often just signaling mechanisms for the DOJ to say, "Hey, we're this is something that we're going after. It's something we take seriously." And it might implicate, the 2 Canadian individuals, but I doubt that we'll see the actual Russians.
Well, in the indictment, there was one that I don't know who it was. Like they were alluded to as Founder 1 and Founder 2, and I believe Founder 1 and Founder 2 were the founders of Tenet. I believe I could be wrong. That was Lauren Chen and her husband. But one of the founders, Founder 1 or Founder 2, there was an issue of they weren't getting the funds dispersed that they needed. And they sent an email like, hey, we haven't received the money yet, and there's some problems here potentially. And then they did a Google search of what time is it in Moscow.
Oh yeah, they knew. So I think that they could absolutely have a criminal liability, like because the first count is a conspiracy, and it says that they conspired to get these individuals to break FARA. And so
on that subject, somebody from either from one of your chats says AG Garland said something along the lines of, quote, "This investigation is not concluded and is still ongoing," end quote. Curious if they're going to be implicated later on. So Pisco, can you say, obviously you don't have a crystal ball, but is it possible that we could see any of the Tenet
creators,
personalities or creators indicted?
It's definitely possible if more information comes out, right?
Well, yeah, but anything's possible if more information comes out. You'd have to show that they were intentional about their actions. So you'd have to show criminal mens rea, and that would require them like knowing or acknowledging the source of the money. And so could I see there be a subpoena or something of, I mean, think about it, right? Like let's say that you subpoenaed, grand jury subpoena for Tim Pool's records, all his communications with Tenet Media, right? And let's say or even the internal communications where there's some chat that says, this might be coming from Russia. You could see those lines of investigation potentially. Now, do I think it's possible they're going to do that? Maybe, but I just don't know. I think the Lauren Chen situation, that from the face of the indictment, it looks like there's criminal liability there. And so I'd be surprised. And if they live in Canada, that's a allied country. And so
if they did know, someone in chat saying it, but if they did know, Dave Rubin is 100% flipping first. He will flip.
Where do I sign?
I'm not sure they knew. And the indictment goes out of the way to say that they were lied to. And I think that at least individual 1, individual 2, content creator 1, content creator 2, it says that they were lied to. And I'm not so sure that it would use that language. Now it's possible that they were lied to initially, but then later found out, and then all that stuff, right? So, so there are. I'm not saying that there would never be liability, but the fact that they said that like they were lied to me indicates that they probably were unaware. What
I'm doing right now. You know what I'm doing right now. I'm going to look on all of their Twitter. Do a search of their Twitter and see if any of them either said or retweeted anything about Comrade Kamala or anything like that. I'm just going to see if the word comrade was used in any of their Twitters.
One thing that they don't need to worry about is any kind of loss of their audience, because conservative consumers of news media, MAGA, that whole media ecosystem, they have no standards whatsoever. So I literally don't think any of them are gonna lose a single viewer from this, which is
they might gain some.
Yeah, honestly, true.
I think the biggest financial risk of something like this is not just the seizure of potential payments, but also, I mean, this is you'd have to imagine if like it's found that this is true, you'd have to say their channels are all getting banned from like every platform, right?
Tim Pool's them?
I mean, there's no way you wouldn't get banned from YouTube if you were convicted of taking like Russian state media money, right? Like you'd have to imagine that your platform
isn't RT allowed on YouTube?
You might just be demonetized and not banned, because that's what happened with like
put like a little thing on it.
But this isn't just like. But that's the issue, though, isn't it? Like this, from what I understand, this isn't just Russian state-funded media. This was Russian state-funded media that was produced with the intention of harming our democracy, right? That was part of the indictment as well, or at least that was part of what Garland stated. And in a conspiratorial manner, these funds were funneled, right? And so I would, especially if there's a conviction, I don't know. I
Truly-
imagine people are getting banned from everything if if you're implicated in such a thing.
I agree that those like circumstances are there and present, and that is what happened. But strictly speaking, that's not what the crime is. Right? The crime isn't, you're a foreign agent who wants to destroy American democracy. It's just, you're a foreign agent at all, and you didn't register, which is why you're getting some of these clapbacks, which are like, well, what about Israel and what about APAC and all that stuff, right? Because by the sheer letter of the law, it doesn't really matter if you have benign interest or non-benign interest. Same thing with money laundering, right? You could say that this is all in the interest of American democracy, and we're doing this foreign
Wait, really
influence for the
quick,
benefit of America, right? And it would
Hold
still be
on.
a violation.
Pisco, I will agree with
Yeah.
you. It would be funnier if they weren't banned, because that's another thing where it's like Destiny is still banned, but literal Russian
Yeah.
state-funded agents aren't
Right.
banned. So that
We
would-
just need more of that.
exactly. That would be one more chip on the pile of craziness. In that regard.
It's and I don't even necessarily want to see them banned. I'm very
You clearly
even in my-
want to see them. Let's be clear here.
What?
You are clearly wanting to see them pilloried and shamed and mocked.
Dude,
Yeah.
if Tim
Yeah.
Pool took Russian state media money, that is a perfectly reasonable. He should probably be banned for that. For God's sakes, I mean, if there's any
But hang on,
reason.
wait. So would you ban anyone who, let's say, is not taking that money but is espousing the same beliefs for the same purposes in America?
No, that's not the same thing. I mean,
It's not
if
the
you're
same
wittingly taking money to spread disinformation, that's a
Is it
very
the taking of
bannable
money?
offense.
But let's say that your genuine aim is the same kind of disruption. You're just not taking the money.
The government
no, it's
has
not, but it's not the same thing.
The government is not in the business of policing the exact words people say, but rather necessarily if they're getting this foreign money and they're conspiring to hide it. I think that's where the government comes in and says that's a big problem. Because nothing in this, I mean, nothing in this, I guess you could say foundationally is about the content of the speech. It's the rationale. Yeah, exactly. The sort of logistics of the speech that you could say is happening.
I just don't know if that's a platform issue. I think the platform issue should be related to the speech, and I don't know that it should be related to the manner in which the speech is conducted, except to the extent that you're making rules specifically about that. Because then you have like people like Haas and what's this other guy?
Jackson Hinkle.
Jackson
Jackson
Hinkle.
Hinkle, yeah.
Are they being paid? Are they not? I'm not sure, but like, let's say they actually register under FARA, right? That's another example, right? Let's say that they are actually Russian, foreign agents, but they register. Would we say that they should be banned off YouTube?
Wait a minute.
What's that?
Wasn't there again? I keep just Rob. If you're watching, I've got you on the brain. Wasn't Rob Noor on Tim Pool's show or whatever? So was he fraternizing with an unregistered foreign agent?
No, because unless you have evidence that Tim Pool knew
I'm
about
just-
it.
I'm just
Let
saying.
Josiah have his fun, Pisco.
Listen,
My
let me
goodness.
have it. I mean,
Yeah, you can have it.
I've been waterboarded with Hunter Biden being an unregistered foreign agent and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Anyway, real quick here.
It could come out that Tim Pool knowingly did this and he would not lose a single viewer. Like that's
No,
how
of course
far
not.
gone the conservative movement is in this country. Half of them straight up like Russia at this point.
So speaking of Pisco, apparently his charity is being mocked in chat. Pisco is getting paid and is trying to cover his
No,
own
I
ass.
don't get paid for any of this. Like this is all just because I love the country. I guess I get paid now from Twitter. Sorry, I'll disclose how much money I made from Twitter. Just give me 1 second.
Yeah, he's got to count the number. He's got to count the fucking commas.
I
He's
made
bragging, chat.
$30 on Twitter in the last 2 weeks. So yeah, that's I guess I am getting paid. But
$60 a month.
Damn, I got you crushed, bro.
yeah, well, you have more followers, Hutch. You got more followers.
Dude,
I
Hutch
didn't
is
even
like
make that much
fucking
more than you. I got
drowning.
9382. 9382.
wow.
Hutch is
Look at that.
drowning in fucking followers. Like I went to like retweet or like something that he did, and I lost track of the tweet, so I had to go to his profile. And I guess I never paid attention to the number, but it's like 350,000. Like you got something on your shoulder, baby. Like it's just like you're drowning in fucking Twitter followers.
I've been at this for 15 years so you guys know, but it was mostly
OG.
gaming for a while.
Mm.
Yeah, I bet there's a lot of replies on Hutch's tweets. Bro, we don't want to hear about this. We want to hear about Call of Duty. Okay, stop talking about
Yeah,
Russia.
I still get
Right.
those, even though I've been doing
Yeah.
mostly politics for like 5 years. I still get those. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
But really quick, we've got to pay. This is like a death pool, but it's a pool for who do we imagine will be implicated in the future. of this whole thing, if we had to pick a couple of names, these are just guesses. These are bets, but let's
That have
Jimmy
not
Dore's
been
a good
already
bet.
been named.
Jimmy Dore's a good bet.
no, Hutch. I already picked Jimmy Dore. This is we're
Candace
gonna
Owens.
follow this. So hold on,
Candace Owens.
let's go one by one. I picked Jimmy Dore. Okay, Josiah, who do you think? And we'll, this is a friendly little wager here. Who do you think is going to be the next person implicated in such a thing?
I don't know enough. Who's that? Who's the one who kept defending Russia? That
Tucker.
he argued with Vosh. Vosh kept saying the guys that Michael
Tracy.
Yeah, that'll be mine.
Except Michael Tracy, I think he's an actual person, because Michael Tracy will actually critique Russia.
Oh, does he?
And say that Russia is wrong for invading. And now I know Lauren Chen also initially said that, but he's been more consistent about it.
What about
Who's
the
the guy that did
comedian who also debated Vosh then?
Comedian?
Dave Smith?
That guy. Fine. That's mine.
These are bad picks.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I don't know my lore.
No, hold on. You've locked in one of your picks. That was one of your. Hutch, who's your first pick?
It would be Candace Owens, but then also I would look into Matt Taibbi or Tulsi Gabbard would be like runners up there.
Fuck. Can I change?
I was gonna say Tulsi.
I want Tulsi.
Okay, so you pick Matt Taibbi, and then
Candace is at the top of my list for sure, because she is
number one for Hutch. Pisco, who's
I was gonna say Tulsi, but I was gonna say Tulsi, and I'll say Tulsi.
I can't believe you guys.
Sidebar, real quick. The Candace Owens, she also has like really strong like pro-Russia position. I don't follow her shit.
She has got some very strong positions on a lot of things.
I know she's like a Nazi or something like that. She's like really anti-Semitic. But like, what about? I didn't know what her position was on Russia and Ukraine.
Calling everyone a Nazi. Oh, just because you praise Hitler once or twice, all of a sudden,
once or twice,
all of a sudden. No, but listen, you guys are crazy. My second pick, Tucker Carlson. Okay, Jimmy Dore, Tucker Carlson. Those are my top two picks. I think those guys. Frankly, I'd be damn surprised if they weren't. But we'll see. Obviously, this is only a guess. But I don't know. I guess the timeline of this is going to be. I guess if it's not a completed investigation, I mean, I guess presumably this could take, another year or two. Maybe just another reason to vote for Kamala. Because Trump would almost certainly stop all these investigations.
He literally would.
Highly suspicious, but of course he would. Yeah, so that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we need to enforce FARA. I think that it's a good stat. But here's the problem, right? Those of you who are going to have debates about this and whether or not these are justified or whatever, you need to have some foundation in FARA, because you are going to be brought up with like, well, what about Israel? What about this or that? And if you're not, and this is to everyone, not just people on the panel, like if you are part of the space or if you are joining these panels or these junior debate space, whatever that is, have some grounding if you're going to be called on it, so that you can distinguish cases and say, hey, this is different, or APAC is a domestic whatever, or you can't specifically tie the money back, and know in advance, like what's toxic about this is is it the ideas themselves? Because that can't be it. It has to be the nature of the relationship. Go ahead.
Can we just talk about we talk about grading Trump on a curve, but I feel like that broadly just applies to conservatives. Can we just imagine for a minute if it was exposed that Destiny unwittingly took money from Venezuela to push Venezuelan talking points?
Steven,
like it would be. It would be like, or I mean, more.
Yes, you stop making the allegation.
I'm sorry, I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Or more appropriately, if it was like if it was like a CNN, if it was discovered that CNN took a sponsorship from, something. If the roles were reversed, what would Tim Pool be tweeting about CNN? What would Benny Johnson be tweeting about CNN? What would Lauren Southern be tweeting about CNN? Like, but the fact that it would end the career of Jake Tapper if something like this happened at CNN, whatever. He would literally never get a job in journalism ever again. And none of these content creators have anything to worry about in terms of that. So I think
that's why I think you're all doing the Lord's work by making fun of them as viciously and consistently as you are. And why I think it's probably good that Destiny does it too. Yeah, there won't be. It sounds like there won't be like any, serious reputational or professional penalty to their, unwitting association with the Russian government. But yeah, I think that they should definitely be roasted for it. It will be interesting to see how shameless they'd be in response, because again, that's why I'm curious. I was actually kind of surprised that and maybe I shouldn't be, but I was surprised that Benny Johnson and Tim Pool seemed to issue serious public statements. I mean, maybe they were advised to by counsel, Pisco.
100%. And
Yeah.
like, I think partially because think about the potential liability. Number one, if you say something out of turn about any individual implicated here, it could be problematic vis-a-vis them. If you say something potentially incriminating about yourself, it could be a basis for further investigation from the Department of Justice. And so yeah, I think that you need to be really careful. If they weren't advised by counsel, they should have been, because I think that this is very much a legal situation as well as a political one. Now, it might be the case that the PR situation outweighs the threat of the liability because they're genuinely just, didn't know anything. But even if you genuinely have no culpability in your head, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be advised by counsel and when you make statements, because the government can't read your mind.
So I'm sorry, but we're gonna have to interrupt this because I know eventually people are gonna have to leave. But on this subject, I just saw this, and apparently, I just got a notification from DGG about this particular take. So we're gonna watch some of this.
I'm
and
gonna
see.
guess that she minimizes it. I'm gonna
There's
guess.
no
I-
way.
I've obviously not seen it. We're gonna watch on 1.25 speed.
Anna, come on. Prove me
but-
wrong.
She's gonna tie it to Israel somehow. Watch.
Prove Hutch wrong,
Today,
Anna.
the Department of Justice charged 2 Russian state media employees with allegedly infiltrating an American digital media company and allegedly manipulating its content and the output.
By the way, if at any point you all want for me to stop it because you have something substantive to say, just say stop it and I'll pause it.
Of the company. Now, even though the DOJ did not reveal the name of this US-based media company, it is suspected that they're talking about Tenet Media, and some of the talent associated with Tenet Media has kind of come out on social media to kind of confirm this. So we'll get to those details in just a moment. But first, we do need to give you some more details on what these allegations entail. So the DOJ's press release on the charges claimed that 2 Russian employees were from the Russian media outlet called Russia Today, or RT, and they used fake personas in order to get hired at this American-based media company. They then allegedly worked from within this company to amplify pro-Russian narratives and attempt to stoke divisions among Americans. Now, the company's 2 founders also both allegedly have ties to RT and were involved in this whole scheme. I want to just stop for a moment and make sure we're all on the same page. These are indictments. The DOJ is making allegations. Obviously, they need to prove what they are alleging, but these allegations have specific names tied to them and very specific methods in which they allegedly tried to infiltrate the American media to spread disinformation on behalf of the Russian government. So the indictment features a woman by the name of Elena, or Elena, I should say, Elena. I'm gonna do my best with her last name, Afanasyeva, one of the undercover Russian employees allegedly that was charged in this indictment. So let's go to the DOJ's press release on this and what they are claiming. So after the March 22nd, 2024 terrorist attack on a music venue in Moscow, she asked one of US Company One's founders to blame Ukraine and the United States for the attack, writing, quote, "I think we can focus on the Ukraine-US angle. The mainstream media spread fake news that ISIS claimed responsibility for the attack, yet ISIS itself never made such statements. All terrorists are now detained while they were heading to the border with Ukraine, which makes it even more suspicious. Why would they want to go to Ukraine to hide?" Now, the terrorist attack that she was referring to was a terrorist attack that was carried out by ISIS. ISIS did take full responsibility for it. So this allegation that they didn't was ridiculous. In fact, CNN, which reported on the story at the time, said that ISIS had claimed responsibility for an attack at a popular concert hall complex near Moscow after assailants stormed the venue with guns and incendiary devices, killing 60 people and injuring 145. The terror group took responsibility for the attack in a short statement published by ISIS-affiliated news agency Amaq on Telegram.
Hey, don't scroll away.
So that
Come
shows
back.
on at
Because
least
before
one
the video-
occasion, you had a back and forth about not just payments, but the nature of the content. And so that's why that's a critical allegation.
American company. Again, the speculation is that the American company is Tenet Media. And I also should just note that RT obviously is funded by the Russian government. So Russian government funds RT, and according to the DOJ, RT then took certain sum and then funneled it to Tenet Media. So between in or about October 2023 and in or about August 2024, RT sent wire transfers to US Company One totaling approximately $9.7 million, which represented nearly 90% of this company's bank deposits from all sources combined. So Tenet Media, according to these allegations by the Department of Justice, was nearly completely funded by the Russian government. Now, there's more. So the 2 Russian employees in this indictment have been charged with conspiracy to violate the Foreign Agent Registration Act, which carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison, and conspiracy to commit money laundering, which carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. So what's different in this allegation compared to Russia-based allegations that we've heard from our government in the past is that this is a lot more specific. It names 2 specific individuals. It talks about how this scheme allegedly worked. It gives you a specific amount of money that the Russian government allegedly funneled to Tenet Media. And apparently the Department of Justice's statement, press release, and press conference about this was so detailed that some of the American-based talent who are associated with Tenet Media felt the need to come forward and essentially defend themselves and say, yeah, we worked for Tenet Media, but we were unwittingly spreading Russian propaganda. We're gonna get to that in just a moment, so hold on. So as for what the American company involved in this scheme is gonna deal with, so far we can only speculate, but we do have some clues, again, that it was Tenet Media. And that's because the DOJ press release gave us some clues. We got some hints, right? They said that the company is based in Tennessee. Tenet Media is based in Tennessee. In the business of posting commentary videos to social media, that's not really much of a hint. A lot of different media organizations do that. And identify 6 commentators as talent on its website. So this is where things start to get a little juicy. And so, well, a company called Tenet Media checks all of those boxes. And here's the talent at the company. You have, a lot of right-wing voices: Lauren Southern, Tim Pool. I'm not familiar with Taylor Hansen, Matt Christensen, Dave Rubin, Benny Johnson. All of these individuals have been working as talent for Tenet Media. And Tim Pool, to his credit, has responded to these allegations. He did not respond in a way that I expected him to respond. I thought that he was gonna just lose it and deny everything and say that this is just another attempt to go after Donald Trump and hurt his chances of getting elected. But no, he didn't do that, again, to his credit. So let's actually go to what he did.
Anna is so, oh my God, to his credit, he says, I'm the victim here. I was paid all this money, poor me. And it doesn't even make sense. I'm the victim, but I just did what I was gonna do anyway. Like, how make it make sense? You were gonna do what you were gonna do anyway. So nothing that you said would have been different at all. And you were paid a shit ton of money. How are you the victim?
Say, this is what he posted on X. Should these allegations prove true, I, as well as the other personalities and commentators, were deceived and are victims. I cannot speak for anyone else at the company as to what they do or to what they are instructed. The Culture War podcast was licensed by Tenet Media. It existed well before any license agreement with Tenet, and it will continue to exist after any such agreement expires. The only change with the agreement was that the location of the live broadcast moved to Tenet's YouTube channel. He also refers to Putin as a scumbag and says that Russia sucks donkey balls. So you've got that. But
there you go.
Yeah, you would say that, wouldn't you? Yeah, you would say that, wouldn't you?
His
Show
counsel,
us receipts then.
His counsel explicitly told him to add that part.
he also goes on to say that Tenet Media had no editorial control over the content that he puts out as part of the Culture War podcast. So there wasn't this effort to essentially right off the bat claim that the DOJ is making things up, and I really respect the fact that Tim Pool did not do that.
Here's the
sorry. Because then what was he getting paid for? Like that doesn't make any sense.
So Hutch, this is if I'm being ultra skeptical, which in many modes of my life I am ultra skeptical. So you're telling me you're getting paid an exorbitant amount of money, and you're just doing what you're going to do anyway, and you're just hosting it in a place. And you don't really know, like you get a message sent about this guy. What's the guy's name again? It's the fakest sounding name of all time.
It's like Kalishnikov
Ongo
it's like the most Russian name ever.
Yeah, like whatever this is. And you like are sent a screenshot of something or whatever, and you're just like, oh, whatever. I don't really. That is willful blindness. That's like saying, hey, take this bag of whatever. Have you guys ever seen Cabaret? Sorry.
The wine.
Take this bag of thing, bring it across the border, but don't look what's inside the bag. There should have been plenty of things that would put you on notice that, hey, shouldn't I like look into who's funding me? I'm looking at all these views of Tenet. It's like 6K, 10K, 20K. There's no way they're funding like the amount of money I'm paying. And so that's kind of my skeptical look, is not necessarily that you 100% knew, but you should have known something was suspicious.
No, but he's saying that they didn't have any editorial control. That, I mean, that may or may not be true. Like that's kind of that's language that allows him to sort of like kind of squirm a little bit, or not squirm, but like anyways. But it's just then what exactly were you getting paid for? If they had no influence on what kind of content you were making, why the fuck are they paying you $500,000 a month? Like,
Yeah,
it just doesn't make any sense.
That's I think that's,
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that's the difficult part here, is that like it's I mean, it's not like a show like Tim Pool's has a lot of overhead, right? So that's why I'm saying, like, even the charitable reading of like, oh, they just wanted to make sure that a useful idiot, tool was well funded and, wouldn't close its doors or whatever. That's kind of the issue, right? Is that like, well, Tim Pool was probably not underwater at any point, right? Like, these are probably shows that would be around today in essentially the same sort of fundamental form. And so, yeah, I mean, it's that's why it is so difficult to imagine that they wouldn't have, at least some sort of editorial influence. But I don't know. I guess we don't have much to go off of to say either way.
And he goes on to, again, say that, look, this is what's being alleged. It needs to be proven in court. I agree with him on that. And I do also appreciate that in this particular case, the DOJ is being very specific about what the allegations are, naming very specific people, calling out a specific sum of money that was allegedly funneled from the Russian government to Tenet Media. It's different from the Hunter Biden laptop story is a Russian disinformation campaign, right? I feel stupid to have bought that back in 2020. That ended up being a complete and utter lie, and that was a hoax. But in this case, it seems like there could be some real meat on the bone.
What did she just say?
She just said the Russia 2020, the 2016 narrative. What did she say? Can you?
Okay, hold on. This is what they do. Like the Bernie people from 2016, they constantly like they hated when
okay. Can we just get can I play that part again just to make sure we're all on the same page?
Naming very specific people, calling out a specific sum of money that was allegedly funneled from the Russian government to Tenet Media. It's different from the Hunter Biden laptop story is a Russian disinformation campaign, right? I feel stupid to have bought that back in 2020. That ended up being a complete and utter lie, and that was a hoax. But in this case, it seems like
So what we're talking about here now, in the terms of it's a Russian disinformation, is the letter made by those former intelligence agency officials that said that this has the hallmark of Russian disinformation, but explicitly disclaiming any specific knowledge about whether or not it was, right? And furthermore, just again, whiffing on the distinction between what the FBI had and what Rudy Giuliani had. These are different devices. One which the FBI does not have is not overseeing the chain of custody or what's going on it. So I think it's totally dishonest by Anna to claim any kind of parody here, or there was a widespread intentional malicious narrative related to that.
It's incredibly reductive too, because again, it's like the same people who say that Russia Gate was a hoax simply because Special Counsel Mueller did not prove conspiracy between Donald Trump specifically and the Russian government, even though there was quite a bit of substance to the Russian investigations, multiple indictments, multiple convictions secured of the inappropriate, unlawful contacts between the Trump campaign and Russian state actors. So when people say Russiagate was a hoax, it's actually really reductive and dishonest. And anyway, Hutch, you were going to say?
What I was going to say was that a lot of the like super pro Bernie or bust people from 2016, they hated the whole talk of like Russian interference, because to them, the only reason that Hillary Clinton lost was because she was a terrible candidate who didn't campaign in the Rust Belt. And anything that cut against that, I mean, that was a factor.
That is true.
Anything that cut against that, they wanted to just dismiss. And so like a lot of like the Kyle Kalinskis and the Young Turks or whatever, they really minimized like the Russian interference in 2016, just as a rule of thumb.
Did any of you people read the indictment? I'm pretty sure Pisco did, and probably Hutch too. And
a chunk of it. Bit of a chunk of it, not the whole thing.
What's the question?
Oh, just somebody said, did any of you people read the indictment? I assume
Yeah.
when he says you people, like
I read the
there's
indictment, yes.
implication that something that we said contradicts the indictment.
Yeah, I
So,
don't understand.
yeah, they're free to expound. Anything else before we continue?
Let's do it.
There could be some real meat on the bones when it comes to the allegation. And look, to be clear, we should not be okay with any foreign government having any influence over our media, over our politicians. And it is kind of interesting to see where our federal government likes to focus its attention, right? So if you have a massive lobbying group that represents a foreign government, like AIPAC representing Israel, well, is anyone going to argue that AIPAC doesn't have a tremendous amount of influence over our political system, over our media? I mean, just think about that for a second. Now, some might argue, no, but it's okay because the way AIPAC does it is legal. Well, AIPAC doesn't have to register as a foreign agent because of how our organizations are funded, how money in politics works. There's a lot of dark money pouring in, so it's incredibly difficult to engage in oversight. But if anyone is under the impression that it's only Russia that's trying to have an influence over our elections or over our political discourse here in the United States, I mean, I've got a bridge to sell you. So, dealing with Russia is one thing.
Can you pause real quick? This is the same thing with the Arlington stuff, right? The interest that's being protected by FARA isn't necessarily that we can never have foreign influence in America. Again, there's a wide history of foreign, involvement in American domestic affairs, going back to the founding of the country.
Yeah, President Washington. Yeah, the French.
The interest that's being preserved by FARA isn't the elimination of any foreign influence. It's the disclosure of who is and who is not a foreign agent and who is acting as a foreign agent. That's what that is meant to protect. So it's not enough to say, yeah, well, they're doing it in a way that's different. The whole purpose, right, of FARA is to make sure everyone knows who's funding what and who's doing what, right? So if you want to say
she's alleging a FARA violation here, though. Right, that's obviously an allegation. But.
Well, no, she's acknowledging that AIPAC is being run in a way that wouldn't implicate FARA, right? She just said that. She said something to the effect of, "I get it. The way they're doing it is different, and they're fundamentally different." But
well, it sounds like what she because I think earlier she said that the government. It's interesting what the government focuses on and she mentions unregistered foreign agents for AIPAC. I think that what she's alleging is that like the government's just kind of like looking the other way.
That there's a distinction without a difference.
Yes, but the point is that AIPAC does foreign interference, and so does these entities. But she's acknowledging it. I thought in the last 10 seconds she said, "Okay, I get it. The way that they do it is legal." But
it's both. I think she's making both points. I think she's making both.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I just want to reiterate that FARA is about disclosure. It's not necessarily about excising all foreign influence.
I have no problem with it if there is clear evidence.
I'm sorry, Hutch. Go ahead.
It feels like she's minimizing a little bit. Just like, this happens all the time. Like,
so I'm saying it sounds like to me that she is saying that this is a distinction without a difference, that there is a technical distinction here, that one is illegal and the other is not, based on the the circumstances of the law or how the law is distributed, like its design. But fundamentally, that these two situations are exactly the same, and that's why she seems to be disdaining that the Department of Justice is pursuing this particular indictment and not seeking any sort of legal remedy elsewhere. But if one's a violation of the law and the other one isn't, that's a pretty fucking major distinction. Now, if she then wanted to go on to say, and just by the way, I understand that we need to seriously revisit how we fund elections domestically and otherwise. I think that's a fair point to make, but it is interesting how she's like hopping back and forth between recognizing an important distinction and suggesting that distinction is absolutely worthless. Anything you want to add to that, Hutch, before we go back?
No.
And it's easy for the DOJ to actually prosecute this case with evidence on its side. But picking and choosing which foreign government gets to have influence over our political system, I think, is a little questionable, to say the least. And I also want to note that the Fed has taken other action.
That is totally deceptive. So it's suspect for the DOJ to pursue one or the other. Well, it's not suspect if there's no case for one and not the other. And so, be clear about what you're saying. And do you want some new laws being passed that limit, you being in support of Israel generally? And that's kind of what they're saying. They're saying that, we don't want people to support or do you think it's legitimate or like support the interests of Israel. but that's not what FARA is meant to.
No, I don't know. I disagree with that. I think that the TYT guys have a long-standing history of being against basically all money in politics, right? Obviously, they don't like. They feel like money in politics disproportionately underweights their the issues that they care about. Obviously, but I don't know. I don't know if it's like necessarily the content that they care most about. But
No, yeah, I would say, listen, to be charitable to them. I mean, they make it clear that, like, they want to see major reforms to electoral funding. There's no question about that. I don't know. I'm with Hutch and Pisco on this, that there is a major distinction here. Whether an act is lawful, it goes back to what Pisco said yesterday to Lactoid about, Supreme Court reform or, Senate
Not
procedure.
obeying the-
Yeah. The fact that, you can say, well, they have the same effect or a comparable effect, but one being a lawful and constitutional means and the other one not, is in and of itself, in our system of government, a meaningful distinction.
Yeah, she's implicating the DOJ.
Yeah.
She's saying, isn't it weird that the DOJ is doing this and not that? And she's doing some dots because she's trying to say that DOJ and other officials are captured. They're captured by Israeli interests, and that's the point that's being driven here, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Against alleged Russian interference in our media and our elections. According to the New York Times, the Treasury Department has apparently sanctioned Anno Dialogue, a Russian nonprofit that helps run the Doppelganger Network. So the disinformation network, the feds have dubbed the Doppelganger Network, as well as the editor-in-chief of RT. Her name is Margarita Simonian, and her deputies. The State Department has also offered $10 million as a reward for any information pertaining to foreign interference in an American election, and sanctioned 5 Russian state-funded news outlets, including RT, Rupli, and Sputnik. So the one thing that I will say is, look, disinformation, especially disinformation that's being spread within the United States by a foreign actor, is a problem. But I also worry about kind of giving the federal government a lot of leeway in going after media organizations that it suspects of having some sort of foreign
keep it going.
Influence, right? So sanctions, that it's kind of giving the federal government a lot of leeway in going after media organizations that it suspects of having some sort of foreign influence, right? So think about all of the different media organizations that air or operate here in the United States that are funded by a foreign government, right? Al Jazeera is a good example. Al Jazeera does some excellent journalism. But what if the federal government decides that Al Jazeera's coverage of Israel and its, endless war with Palestinians isn't really to our liking? It sows division in America. Like, is the DOJ going to get involved in trying to indict or silence people associated with Al Jazeera, which of course is funded by the Qatari government? And so there could be a door open here that
Sorry, keep going.
feel a little bit uncomfortable with, and I just think that we should proceed with caution and just be a little bit more skeptical of the federal government going after media organizations.
Okay, now I'm gonna go one. Listen, she's talking about Attorney General Merrick goddamn Garland. There's no, asking Merrick Garland to be more cautious. I'm trying to think of a comparable metaphor. It's like asking a slug to slow down. Not like, what are you talking about? He is the most cautious, overly cautious law enforcement officer that there is. This is so ridiculous.
And they have to prove their case. And so we'll see what happens with
also,
these
by the way,
latest indictments.
There currently is like a big controversy about Al Jazeera's FARA status. I'm looking right now, and it appears that in 2020 the DOJ ordered at least a component of Al Jazeera to register as a foreign agent. Now, the status of that I'm not quite sure, but yeah, that is very much an issue for a lot of these news organizations. And the question is, do you think it's legitimate to have something like FARA? And if your point is, it doesn't make any sense, and you can take the Rob train and say we should get rid of FARA, it's all stupid and we should never enforce it. But it sounds like in principle Anna agrees with stopping foreign influence. So I'm actually not sure conceptually what her philosophical take is on even having FARA apply to anybody.
Okay, this week there's just been we needed I guess to go live 3 times,
blow a gasket,
because we needed to go live 3 times this week, just given the content. So I just want to play one clip from this. We're gonna do a hard pivot, but
I'm gonna feed my pets after this.
Yeah, Donald Trump. This is a 40-second clip. It's not a 12-minute one. It's a 40-second clip of Donald Trump from his town hall with Sean Hannity, responding to the shooting, which again I have not been able to look into, but apparently there was a shooting in Georgia today. I don't know if it was a mass shooting or what. Was it a school? Does anybody know about this?
It was cool. Yeah.
In Georgia? Okay. Trump was asked about it. Here's his answer.
I mentioned we had this terrible shooting in Georgia. Right. Our prayers are with our friends in Georgia. And I've been doing town halls and interviews in public with you for all these years since you got into the political arena. And I told this audience, never before have restrictions been so tight, obviously after the assassination attempt as well. And Director Ray said the threat level has never been this bad. He said it 5 consecutive times before Congress. What is going on?
Well, it's a sick and angry world for a lot of reasons. And we're going to make it better. We're going to heal our world. We're going to get rid of all these wars that are starting all over the place.
Oh, my God.
What?
What?
Was he asked about the shooting?
Yes. Yeah. Wait. Listen to his initial response. Look at his face and listen to his words very carefully.
I mentioned we had this terrible shooting in Georgia.
Right.
Our prayers are with our friends in Georgia. And I've been doing town halls and interviews.
Well, it's a sick and angry world for a lot of reasons. And we're going to make it better. We're going to heal our world. We're going to get rid of all these wars that are starting all over the place.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
So
Nailed it.
we had the shooting, right? I mean, like he couldn't even
Can't even pretend to give a crap about the dead people.
Doesn't give a single solitary fuck. And just FYI, chat, those of you watching, be good little, soldiers out there in the social media space. And when anybody ever bitches at any point about any Democrat, the vice president in particular, not giving substantive policy-based answers to questions, refer to clips like this and say, until you are fully prepared to concede that Donald Trump is objectively the worst politician when it comes to giving answers to questions, infinitely worse than the vice president on her worst day, I'm not going to listen to a single fucking thing you have to say about substance because my side is always better than your side. You need to go out and say that into the world. Donald Trump just gave the worst fucking answer in terms of both human empathy and substance to a perfectly fair question. None of us anywhere at any time should ever even accept a criticism against the Democrats when it comes to answers to questions. The vice president could sleepwalk a better answer than that.
Thank you guys so much for doing another Live and Learn. I think there was a bit of a lag before from our last meeting, but it was there's a lot to go over these weeks and a lot we missed. But I'm glad we're back on schedule.
Debate next week
until the election, right?
The debate is next week.
The next, if we're doing this next Wednesday, then that will be the day after the debate.
The day after.
Oh wow! Look at that! Look at that!
Yeah, no. Oh, by the way, just real quick before everybody leaves, how confident are you that the vice president will win that debate? I am 98% confident that she's going to kick his ass.
I'll say 95%.
Hutch?
I feel very confident, and I think that this could be the second most meaningful debate in modern history. The stakes are very high, very, very high.
And then Pisco?
I'm at a 90 as well. I think I'll always consider Harris to have won because it would take a lot for me to give up the substance and say that the person who just, I don't know, it seems more there or dominant in terms of optics would win. So yeah, 90 for me. But in terms of the overall sense of it, yeah, maybe 80.
Okay. All right, folks. Appreciate